Hi, friends, and welcome to our first Sunday of Christmas recorded podcast, chit chat, fireside extravaganza. We are, the three of us, going to talk about some things that happened here at church over the last year and in our Bible study and our music making and all of the good stuff. So I want to start with Brent. We have been going through the books of the Bible since a kickoff in September, and I wonder what you have learned or relearned in that process that you had forgotten about Genesis or Exodus or Matthew.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I think the lectionary is what it is, and so you know every 3 years it's repeating, and you can go a different direction. But to kind of make up our own. Sure, that's Baptist of us, I guess, and disciples of us. But the idea of going through the Bible wouldn't have seemed like a revolutionary idea. Revolutionary is too strong, but it wouldn't have seemed like this brilliant idea even a generation ago, certainly not 2 generations ago. So to do it now, I think I've been very surprised by how well received it's been. That church members themselves are actually into this, or at least they're telling us they are. But that they're catching bits and pieces that maybe they've known or heard, and it's starting to come together, and we're only a few books in. And so I think that has been a surprise on its own. And then I think just getting back into some of these books to kind of remember what we maybe learned in seminary or div school about each book, what the kind of focus is or the point, to kind of get back into that and see if we see it, if that applies to what we're trying to do here, or if there are other angles we can come from. And so I think, you take something like Exodus during Advent, that is an odd mixture on the surface, but once you get into it, it really fits with what we really know Advent to be, which is this deep pining for something hopeful to come in and save us from whatever mess we're in or predicament. And so to see a book that is devoted to that and so many stories, the stories have been really reading them with the context of First Baptist. I think they're even more problematic at times with the violence or what is ascribed to God or condoned by God. But I think we've been able to each time we've preached, I think we've been able to take that at face value for a period of time, and then kind of look at how we got to the books that are written and where we are today. So anyway, without re-preaching them all over again, I think
it right now.
Yeah,
Preach all the sermons.
All right, off the top of my head. So I think that's been a surprise and a fun part for me.
Yeah, I think finding things in the stories when I'm especially trying to put together the intermissios and lay out sort of what happened between the scenes, and means reading through all of those chapters of Genesis and then Exodus and remembering some just truly strange things that get included in those stories. Like the whole scene of Jacob painting different colored sticks to produce different shapes of sheep, and then the various wives and sisters arguing with each other about the harvesting of mandrakes. Like, there's just some very strange stuff in and among all of these foundational stories of our faith.
It has been fascinating. From a musical perspective, we gather together and we say, okay, here's what the choir's working on. Here are some of the hymns we want to do. How can we make it all jive? And I'll say, okay, what are we focusing on in 3 weeks? And it's like, well, here's the story. And we say, okay, what do we have anything about sheep and mandrakes and so forth? Like, probably not in the repertoire. But you all have done a great job of making it work and also showing us the context that was there. Like, there are a lot of things that we don't know today that would have been common knowledge for the people first reading these stories and first talking about these stories. It really is an educational thing. Like, you have to teach the context. We don't know it culturally.
Brent, did you have more to say about that?
Yeah, well, this is going to be a violent example,
Okay.
but in the spirit of some of these texts, I guess. But someone born post 9/11 is going to wonder what it was like before, maybe for getting on an airplane or whatever. But they're also like because certain laws have been on the books since 9/11 to launch drones or whatever it may be, missiles at terrorists. That's just kind of accepted now that's just part of it. All they have to do, I mean, that thing's only been around for 24 years. Like, they just rescind it and we go back to what life was like before. I'm not advocating one way or the other with this comment, except that that's context that all of us who are alive pre 9/11 and old enough to remember it know what happened after that and what went into the way things are now, whether it's warfare or travel. And so there is this sense, you add many, many, many generations and centuries from whatever did happen in the stories of Exodus, if any of them did, to then go generations, like centuries later, to people in the same type of predicament, and they're reframing their stories. Like, that has been really helpful, I think, for people to recognize. We're saying it almost every week because it's important, but I think it's starting to kind of stick if they didn't know that already.
Yeah, I think in addition to coming across some of the really wild things, one of the things that has struck me this set of readings has been how often the Bible refers to back in those days. Like, this centuries and in some cases millennia old set of stories is already almost nostalgic for a time that it was past. And I think that says something, I'm not sure what, but something about the human condition that 3,000 years later, we still think of ourselves as separated from a time of holiness, but so did they.
And the idea of time, like, it's all one book now, if you will, for Christians anyway. And so it's all just in there, and it's just the Bible. But when you think about, like, whatever historicity is in there, you go, whenever the Egyptian stuff happened, at least 600 years before the captivity, if it did happen at all, and then you go another 600 years to get to Jesus, and so that would take us to like 800 AD or something, and stop in the middle there to the late 1400s or something, to like show what that's like. And that to me feels like so far back when I think
it's King Arthur. I mean, King Arthur was maybe a real person and probably around 800 or something, and we have these kind of mythical stories,
or like a Columbus discovering this side of the world, like somewhere in there. Like, that feels like so long ago. And then we get to these stories and we have no concept because it's just all the same to us. It's flattened in some ways.
Yeah, but they're telling narratives intentionally that speak to them in that time and what they're going through, in captivity. And so you have to translate a thing that was a story for people in another time. You have to teach people today all of the context so that they understand what it meant for them, let alone how to apply it today to us, let alone in the season of Advent. I mean, it's a complex project. Yeah,
and you're talking about layers of you're talking about, and again, I'm just saying this to give a figure, but say 1200 BC for Egypt, probably way back further than that, if at all. But you've got that period of time that the story is supposedly set in. And then you've got the context of when it was written, and that's a whole other
600 years,
a whole other period of time, and what they're going through. And then if we're trying to connect it to Advent, then you go to a third context, and in a lot of ways, it's probably too much in one sermon. But what, to get back to your point, Catherine, and then today again a fourth context. But to get back to your point, these are stories and truths that transcend the time, the context, and even the details, whether they really happened or not. The truths transcend those because they're very human conditions. And then it's still asserting something about God in the process. Yeah.
So for you, Wesley, what has been new things that you have discovered in liturgy building this year, or if you want to take that in the direction of having a choir with more than 30 and marking that milestone, anything in there to reflect on?
Yeah, absolutely. I alluded to it earlier that it's as Brent said, you have these 3 lectionary years that rotate, and a lot of music directors will kind of have their go-to anthems and pieces and things that they know their choirs can do well. And 3 years goes by from year A to year C, and it's like, oh, we could repeat this piece, or we could bring this back in. But if you venture away and you go to some other track like this, you can think, okay, what can we achieve? What's something that we haven't done that, these are stories that don't show up in the lectionary typically. So what's something new we can add in? And with that comes like, okay, we haven't tried this before. Do we have the coverage for it? Do we feel, especially in 2025, people travel a lot. Like people, it's not 150 years ago where just people were mostly centered around their house and they could do these weekly things every single week. Our people are busy and they're traveling. So how many people are around? When's WPI on break? Can we line up this piece with this sort of thing? You mentioned us kind of breaking that 30-person mark in the choir. That's a special point, I would say, in a church choir because people can all bear the burden together. Mm. When you have, even if you get 4 per part, you have 4 choral parts, and then you're looking at 16 people, if it were evenly dispersed, 4 is the first moment, 4 per part, where you can sort of say, okay, we're all carrying a little piece of this heavy thing together. No one person has to bear the brunt of the whole line. But 4 is still a bit shaky, and then even if one person is gone, you reduce by 25% the number of people on the line. It's like when you get to the point where you have 30 people in a choir, everyone can move together and feel confident. And if people are gone and traveling a little bit, there's a kind of ship of Theseus where all these different parts are coming in and rebuilding the whole entity together. And we hit that point. So when we got to Lessons and Carols this year, we felt good. Like we really felt like we were a unit that had all of these little parts. And through the entire season, I would say every Sunday was strong. And all the choral music we did, they did a great job. And that felt really good, especially after COVID was really tough for all sorts of organizations. But they did an amazing job, and that's the world we are in now. Like, people are traveling, people are out, so any Sunday somebody's able to come. If somebody is around Worcester only for 5 weeks in the whole fall, we need to make sure that, I don't want to call it a product, it's a church, it's a worship service, but the thing that we are all together producing, it has to be moving and it has to be powerful. And you want to create a world where people can come once in September, once in October, twice in December, and have an amazing, amazing spiritual experience.
Yeah. My perspective on that was shifted by, I was at Lessons and Carols sitting up behind the pulpit with Brent, and it sounded beautiful. But watching the video, and hearing how it sounded from out in the room was just a whole other thing. And that was really fascinating because even if I'm not singing with the choir, if I'm sitting near the choir, it just sounds very different. And so,
yeah, we've talked about this before, but the room has such a loud voice in the worship experience. This goes for sermons and for the experience of church outside of music as well. But the barrel vault in the sanctuary makes this echo and makes this acoustic, and then we face in this sort of apse area that collects all the sound of the voices that are together singing across the way. And then it sort of mixes it all around and it sends it out as not individual, 30 individual voices, but instead this one unit that goes out and kind of washes over you in the room. I always tell the choir, the only thing you can't do is all go hear what you sound like in the room, because we wouldn't have a choir. But I toy with the idea of singing and sending one of them at a time out into the room to just go and then tap someone back in so you get to hear the effect, because it really is remarkable.
We did that in basketball practice, so just nice. Take turns going around the laps. But I guess I'm curious too, to the extent you feel comfortable elaborating, because I think some people in the congregation are musically inclined, or musicians themselves, and then a lot of us are not. Or we can tell what sounds beautiful and maybe what doesn't. I don't know.
You didn't hear any of that,
not
though.
From here. Just
of
when we
not.
go somewhere else.
Just what doesn't.
All the posters
just
were
in
perfect.
general. Yeah. So, but I guess I'm wondering how it is for you as in the role of directing the choir as the choral director. What is it like to have to prepare ahead of time? So we're talking about hitting this magic number that's made it a little bit easier. You didn't have that a year ago, maybe 18 months ago. I found that photo I sent to you from 21 or 22, the post-COVID choir rehearsal.
Half the size, right?
Well, I think there were like
even.
6 people, but maybe some people were late, but it was like 6 or something. And I think there were periods, of course, where there were more. But I guess I'm wondering, we take it for granted. The choir just knows what they're doing, and they get up there and they do it. And I think what people don't recognize is that there is a rehearsal, and you have to figure out what you all can do for a Sunday. But also what you can do on a Sunday depends on who's there on a Thursday and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if there's anything there that you can elaborate on for the layperson to kind of get a better sense or a deeper sense of what you, Wesley, put into it along with the choir.
Yeah, I did some quick kind of napkin math for one of the news that back of the napkin.
It used to be abacus, and then
there you go,
math,
and then we went to
now
napkin
calculators.
math.
Now they teach new math in schools.
I know. I was helping my niece the other day. How did math change? Like what?
Yeah.
Anyway, napkin math about the human hours that go into preparing one anthem for the choir, and you tally up. Okay, 30 people or so. They rehearse for an hour and a half on a Thursday night-ish, and then an hour on Sunday morning. They sing in the service. And we're talking about 100 hours of human time a week, something like that. And if you tally up, when we sing an anthem at Lessons and Carols, say, like it's possible that a piece has been sung for over 100 hours to prepare for it of human time. And yeah, there's logistics, and we have to say, okay, we need to hit these 7 pieces tonight, and so that we can do these new pieces next week. We have the stuff for Sunday mornings. We're looking ahead to various other times. I mean, next term we're going to do a Bach cantata, like we're going to at Mechanics Hall. Like we have to plan all that out. But really, it's the people making their time and adjusting their schedules, and our parishioners do that. They say, okay, I have this concert, or I want to go to this dinner or this event, but I'm going to move it because I want to keep Thursday night open so I can rehearse, so I can learn the music. When our people have to miss, because our people are very plugged in the community, they're in many different organizations, they'll take their music home and we'll email, and they'll sit and listen to recordings and sing along in their own house with the music open, right? They're a dedicated group of people because everyone relies on each other. It all becomes this trust, this community trust thing. The final cherry on top there is that when we sing a cappella, meaning without accompaniment, just the choir, the final act of trust is, okay, I'm just standing in the middle of the room. I'm not near a keyboard. I can't quote unquote help. And they're just standing in groups away from each other. There's no safety net, so to speak, under the trapeze. And they just do it. And you have to, it's like if everybody stops voting, no one votes. And you say, oh, my own voice doesn't matter. My own vote doesn't matter. But it really does. You all have to go together at the same time and lead. So you have this group of leaders all together, but also they're all trust falling into each other. And that's part of that is the magic of like, okay, I'm out there at Lessons and Carols. We start the piece, and then it's in their hands. I'm waving my hands, but it's in their hands to sing it. And then when it all comes together and the individual work for hundreds of hours that all of these people did, it just locks in and it happens. And they feel so proud of themselves after because they did a thing that no one individual could do, or even 5 or even 10, right? And I think that plays out in so many other areas of church as well, if I may be so bold.
Yes, you might be.
I also think it is particularly remarkable to witness when in rehearsal the choir is struggling with some line or even with some whole piece to get the volume right, or a particular string of notes that's hard because it's dissonant. And quite often, Wesley, you will say, we don't have time to do this one more time, but you've got this. It's going to be great. Mm-hmm. And you can sort of watch the choir pick up their shoulders and buck up. And then in the service, like the Holy Spirit comes and wow.
I always wonder if that happens with sermons. Do you ever I've got all the pieces here, but and then in the moment, does it just sort of, you see the people and you feel the moment and it just happens?
I manuscript my sermons pretty thoroughly. And so I will say one of the downsides of that is it leaves less room for that. I think the way Brent does it of more sort of bullet points and allowing it to be more dynamic allows for more of that. But yes, there have definitely been moments where like something strikes in the moment, or like I'm feeling something from the crowd. And those are the sorts of things that I chalk up to the Holy Spirit, because there is like, I'm not that good. I'm not that good, but God is. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. And I would say the same thing. You prepare. I grew up with extemporaneous preaching, so or presumably, I suppose they practiced and rehearsed it. But yeah, having notes meant you were a weak preacher, let alone having a manuscript. Which also terrified me about the prospect of being a preacher at all. And so I think manuscripting, just is a way to really you get it out, you go through drafts, but you're formulating it so that you don't bore everyone and whatnot. But I agree, it does take a little bit away from that in the moment. But then there are times, it was something you said, and I want to come back to you, Catherine, but there was something you said about the choir and then it's in their hands. And I couldn't help thinking that sermons are a lot like that. You're offering this thing that in this sense, you're doing it on your own, not with a team. But you've crafted this thing that means something to you. Most of the time, I think both of us are the same way, that it's something that we've tried to live or at least breathe. And so it's worn a little bit, and you're offering it, and it's in their hands, and they can only, you can only do so much after that point. You try to be faithful to what you believe and what you think the moment called for. And lately the moment calls for a lot of us, but
boy does it.
But yeah, so I thought that was such an interesting way to put it with the choir, and to think of that with sermons too. But I guess to come back to you, Rev K, I'm thinking back. I've lost track of when you preached it. I think it was when I was away. But there was a sermon in particular that I watched it later and thought it was just splendid, and I think the church did too. And I was surprised watching it that the church responded the way they did. But I'm being coded so that you can say whatever you want to about it. But I wonder how that experience was for you, if it ties into any of what we've been talking about in particular.
I mean, it makes me think about, like, it's in the congregation's hands. I have been doing this long enough to have a sense of how I think something will be received, but I don't always know. And
maybe naming what sermon it was.
The one that I think you're talking about, the one that I did on evangelism, and what evangelism is not or does not need to be, and what it could be for a congregation that, like ours, that seeks to be welcoming but not pushy. And I believe in the Great Commission. I believe in evangelism, and also, like, am a human in the world who tries not to be socially inappropriate and sometimes fails. And so I get why it's hard. So I was like, I'm going to operationalize this. What instructions would I need if I were going to carry this out, and lived through that thought experiment? And it was very much one of those where I thought, I'd done my drafts and my read throughs and sent it to my favorite sermon commentator, which is my mom. And, rejiggered some things, but ultimately preached it going, this might be one of those sermons. Sometimes you can tell when people shake your hand and say, nice job, and have nothing else to say. Like, oh, that was not one that hit well. And this was one that hit well. And I was pleasantly delighted.
And people, a number of parishioners brought a bunch of friends, like to Lessons and Carols, for example, that I think it was part of that, who said, like, oh, I can invite someone to this organization that I love, that I believe does good stuff in the world. Come on with me. It doesn't have to be weird and uncomfortable.
Well, and as I said in the sermon, I think there are churches where you could invite somebody and it would be like inviting them to a family reunion. Even if you thought everybody would be perfectly nice to them, it's going to be weird. I have been to those churches many times. Or, like a kid's elementary school Christmas concert, say, for example. You're going to go because you care about the kids, but you're not expecting great music. it's really just such a delight to invite people to our church, knowing that people are going to be welcoming and genuine about it. You're not going to feel like a weird outsider, very probably. You're going to hear good preaching and excellent music, and the liturgy is going to be well put together. And so it's sort of like, I don't feel sheepish about asking for money for the church because I love what we're doing.
Right.
I don't feel sheepish about inviting people to our church because I love what we're doing and I love being here. So getting the opportunity to share that and having people be like, yeah.
Yeah. It was authentic for you. Like, there was no artifice. You weren't saying like, I need to do this. Like, you do believe in it. And we do see, like, I mean, saying the money, like, we give so much money to charity. Like, the outreach team does so much. Like, just that is like this incredible thing. Like, people are actually fed and clothed directly from this church.
Yeah. And I think, to piggyback off of what you're saying about the spirit of the church and that how you feel about whether it's money or whatever else it may be. And I'm recalling, I won't do a full name drop of everyone I'm thinking of, but several people lately have spoken about how they were getting back into church or trying to find a church, and they had a list, and they came here, and that was it. Like, several people over the last few weeks have talked about that, and I think that's I love that, because that there are so many factors that have to go in for that, for people to feel that good that quickly and permanently, if you will. All the things you said about worship, but also all the things you were saying and that we know about our congregation. Like, meeting us and having coffee with us, I think that's helpful for them to get an inside scoop on what the church is about or what we're headed toward. But it only goes so far. For a lot of people, they actually want the connection to other people who believe the same thing. And I think our church, as you said, is so good at that. And so all of those things have to work together. And when they aren't, you can kind of tell we're off kilter. And so we're just in a real good groove, I think, as a congregation.
People who believe the same thing, or people who believe a different thing, but in a generous way.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, even rarer.
Yeah. So I know we're watching the time. We don't want to take the whole evening here, but I wondered if we could just share as we kind of close out the year here. I know we're going to be talking about some of our hopes and dreams in the future coming up in January and as a church, but could we all just throw out some of our favorite moments and highlights from this year?
I mean, I've loved seeing how many people have wanted to join the church, and I think that was going back to even last fall. That people, the idea of membership is fading for some, certainly in the culture more generally for a lot of areas. And so to kind of latch on and say that not only do I want to join for me, but I want to join for you all because what you're doing matters and I want you to know it and I want to be a part of it. And I think there's something beautiful about that even if membership didn't exist in ancient days, there's still something very true to that, it feels like. So I love seeing that. I love that the choir has felt it from my vantage point. It feels like they're experiencing a boost in confidence, and I think it's similar to membership, I guess, but having people alongside you, more people in it. So those are a couple things, and then I think maybe finally just having my wife around the church has been a real fun.
That's a big highlight
part.
for the
And
church,
you have
too.
one of those.
I have one. That's a highlight for the year, for my life. So that's been really fun to see, and for her to I don't want to speak for her, but to at least feel that to the extent she has the time and wants to get involved and connected, she can do that on her terms as her person. This isn't one of those Southern Baptist churches where the pastor and spouse are a unit that everyone sees.
The first lady.
Yeah. So I've really enjoyed that. All of those things.
I was thinking about a number of, just serendipitous moments that came together throughout the year. I was thinking about, I got permission from the worship art and music team to buy hypno twisters for Pentecost to represent the wind. And
best thing we bought all year.
it was, well, particularly considering that I did not realize they didn't come with the things you would need to wave them around. And so I cobbled something together out of the church basement, and Steph Kishabe like just about tore a rotator cuff twirling that thing over our heads, but it looked so cool. And it was just like, it was one of those moments of maybe this could be magic. And then it was magic. And it felt like the wind of the Holy Spirit. And so I was thinking of that. I was thinking of the song that you, Wesley, and Mike Cotter and I sort of serendipitously wrote together, because I was complaining about the lack of Psalm 139 hymns, and so it sent something to Wesley, and by happenstance he and Mike were going to work on something together that day, and he was like, hey, could you come up here for a second? And then we came up with this cool thing. Like I think some of those moments of, I didn't know how this was going to go, but I'm so happy with how it went.
Yep. A lot of creativity from parishioners, and of course all our teams are working all the time and brainstorming on their projects and keeping the church moving forward. So much creativity. I was overjoyed. We're just coming off the heels of having our Briarwood handbell concert last night. Our handbells are really, really strong. We've got a lot of new members. The choir's doing well. The instruments are in good shape. The church has been generous and allowing us to maintain instruments the way we need to hire people when we need to keep the instruments in tune. And that makes a big difference. I've been really excited about some of the stuff the Social Justice Action Team and WHAM have been doing together. We went on a tour to the St. Mark's campus and looked at how they handle showing themselves to the community, balancing having an old-fashioned looking building, but also with a sense of inclusion. It's been really cool. I love the balance of our sanctuary and then Gordon Hall. I think we were talking about the metaphor of same family, same meal, but dinner in the dining room versus kind of supper at the kitchen table. And you have, there's a little bit of something to dinner at the table. You go around, each person speaks one at a time about ideas and concepts. Supper in the kitchen table is casual and fun, but it's really important as well. And I think we get a little bit of that rhythm where we are sometimes in Gordon Hall and we're all really close together. Very, very communal. And then we go in and we say, like, okay, we're doing a really intentional worship thing in the sanctuary. And it's the same church in both cases. And we get to explore those different sides of liturgy and worship and community. I'm just loving it. I think this was a really strong year.
Yeah, I always think it's fun when people start attending in the summer.
Yes.
When we're in Gordon Hall. And so they have this, they found their way to Gordon Hall,
right,
as a guest. So that's amazing. And then they worship for however many weeks with that iteration. And then it's like we start prepping everyone. We're heading back, and it's like to the new people, like we're heading back in the,
buckle up.
Yeah. And then it's this whole other thing, and we don't lose people when that happens.
Right.
They just some of them maybe have a preference for one or the other, and I think we all have a preference at different points for, not wearing a robe, for instance. But I always love seeing it happens every year, more some years than others, but to see that happen. And I did want to add one more highlight for me, very recent. Having our clergy or ordained clergy leading communion during Advent has been really sweet in a way that I knew that it would be great. I didn't expect it to be as sweet and touching. I mean, not to take away, I don't mean that patronizing or take away from how sacred the moment is either. But it's been touching to see. And I think the idea behind it when we talked about it was, when you retire from ministry, you give up all the stuff you don't want to have to deal with anymore. But with that, you also lose some of the beautiful things too. And so to give some retired clergy a chance for them to, we say give it to them. I don't mean it like that, because they also give back to us by doing it. But just the origin of it, I think, a moment to dip their toe back in the thing they used to do, because it's probably one of the areas they miss. And then the way that we're blessed from that. So that's been a special one.
Yep.
Well, I think that is an excellent place for us to wrap up this conversation. Thank you for joining us. If you've made it to the end of the video, we hope that it has been something that has contributed to your Christmas season and this Christmas tide. And we will see you back at Epiphany in the new year.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.